Hi guys, and welcome to the Manabox channel. In this tutorial we will see how to organize a Nextjs project using route grouping. For those of you who don't know what route grouping is, I will explain briefly. Route grouping has simply the ability to add a folder in the project tree without it being considered in the URL. To explain how it works, I will create a simple project. I will use TypeScript, no SLint, no Tailwind. Regarding the Nextjs project structure, I suggest you to do not create the source folder. There are already too many folders to deal with. Better to avoid having one more. Uprooting yes, and no custom import. Let's open the project and check if it works properly. Good. Now we have to create the first two groupings, which are perhaps the most important ones, namely backend and frontend. As you can see, the folder name is put in parentheses, which is what makes it a route grouping folder. Since we normally work on the backend or on the frontend, splitting the project with these two folders helps us quickly find what we want to deal with. Another folder that I suggest adding is the common folder, which in this case is not a route grouping folder and is used to hold data structures in common between the backend and the frontend. Now let's start creating our project. And first of all, we move all the frontend part into the appropriate folder. And as you can see, it perfectly works. We moved all the frontend in the frontend folder. The URL is the same, the root folder, and it works properly. Now let's do some code cleanup. First, let's remove the homepage code and related imports. Next, let's clear the global CSS code and remove the page module CSS. And last, let's check that everything is working properly. The next step is to create two more important folders within the front-end. The first one is the components folder, that is a normal folder, and the second one is the pages folder, that in this case is a route grouping folder. The pages folder is very important as it allows us to group our pages together. Now let's create a couple of simple pages. The first page is the About page, and the second page is the Product page that I'm going to use later to implement some API on the backend. Now that we have created the folders, let's add the actual pages. First the Products page, and then the About page. Finally, let's add the links to these two pages in the home page. As usual, let's give it a try. Good, it works perfectly. Let's now move on to the backend. Surely we need to create an API folder. For this particular project, we don't need to use root grouping folders on the backend, but it's not always the case. For example, if you had a lot of APIs, it might be a good idea to group them together using root grouping folders. I'm used to create a data model folder where I usually put everything related to data fetching, DB connection, schema definition, and stuff like that. First, I create an helper folder where I will put DB connection function. Then, since I'm using MongoDB, I create a schema folder. And last, a model folder where I will put all the CRUD functions. In order to connect to the DB, I need a connection URL, and normally this URL should be put in the .env.local file. Now that we have a connection URL, let's add the connection function itself. So we add a new TypeScript file and then the function. Next, we add the schema. We just have a simple collection named products. And last, let's add a model function to fetch products list from DB. Let's add the TypeScript file. Oops. I misspelled the connect file name. Let me fix it. And then the fetch function. Now, I would like to show you what the common folder is for. First, I create an error codes TypeScript file, in which I declare all the error codes shared between backend and frontend. In this simple project, there is only one, but normally there are a lot. Second, I add a responses TypeScript file in which I declare all the response payloads. Again, given the simplicity of the project, there are no payloads for the requests. But in more complex projects, we normally have to consider those as well. Good. Now that we have shared error codes and response payloads, we can implement the products API. So first we add the product folder and then the root.tsx file. The implementation is very simple. It reads the collection using the data model function and prepares the response. In case of error, it responds with the application error code and the application message. Actually, this is not a good practice. We should never expose server errors on the client side, because doing so, we could provide valuable information to those who want to hack our system. But since this is just a demo application, it's okay. Good. We are close to completing the project, so let's go back to the front end. Now, we need a couple of components in order to implement the products page. The first one is a button that I call Simple Button, and we are going to use it to call the Products API. The second is the Product Item component that we will use to display the product detail. So let's add the Product Item TSX file, then the CSS file. Let's add the CSS code, and then the TypeScript code. Now, let's implement the real products page. That is very simple. There is a use state that defines a variable products, which is an array of products. Then there is a getProducts function that calls the API products and sets the above mentioned variable. As you can see, the getProducts function uses the data structures defined in the common folder. This makes the code easy to maintain, because when we modify these structures, they are automatically modified for both the front end and the back end. The rendering contains the title, a simple button that calls the getProducts function, and when not null, the products array is iterated to display the product details using the product item component. Now, let's give it a try to check if everything works properly. And that's the final result. As you can see, even in a very simple project like this, there are several folders and files to manage. Structuring the project correctly, even through the use of root grouping folders, becomes extremely important. It makes the code much more maintainable and, in some cases, even avoids annoying interference between different members of the development team. That's it for this video, but before we wrap up, let me correct a small error I noticed in the connect function. This return statement is absolutely useless. I remind you that you will find the source code of the project on my Git repository, which URL is below in the description. Hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to leave a comment, subscribe to the channel and share the video.